Hello, my name is Charles Williams. I'm the owner and managing member of Pioneer Realty Capital. Thank you for joining us today with this special episode. This episode will address the current economic climate that we find ourselves in today. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's actually going on around us. Sometimes things may appear to be one way, but what may appear to be the case may not always actually be the case. But to start this off, let me ask you a question. How many of you are scared about the current economic climate? The news it mentioned that there were almost 3 million individual jobless claims just this week. So that means 3 million people lost their job instantly here in this economy. Certainly we're in a shelter-in-place order because of the COVID-19 virus. Individuals cannot go to work. The economy has been driven to a halt as a result of this virus. And many people are afraid that we are getting ready to go into one of the most economically depressed periods that the world has ever seen, because the economy has just come to a halt. Is that the way you feel? Do you feel that economically and financially, this country is getting ready to go into a recession and perhaps even into a depression? Some people feel that way. Many investors are holding off on making investments because of their feelings, their trepidations about the future. Some people are collecting all the money that they can right now because they're predicting that assets are going to be sold for pennies on the dollar. And as with the last economic crisis, they will be able to go and buy these assets, hold them, and then when the economy comes back, they would be able to sell those assets and make a lot of money. So there are people on both sides. There are people that see this as a great opportunity to buy, and there are people who see this as something to be very afraid of and are extremely concerned about their economic futures. Well, I like to say that there's another way of looking at this situation. I personally do not believe that we are going into a recession. I personally do not believe that this country is getting ready to go into a depression. And I'm going to tell you why. This is not an economic crisis. This is a healthcare crisis. Now, what's the difference? Well, think about what's going on. There's a virus that's kind of sweeping through the country, and people who have weak immune systems are going to catch this virus. Everyone is going to be exposed to it. It's impossible. It's an airborne virus. So that means if you breathe air, you're probably going to be exposed at some point or another to this virus, either now or sooner or later. The virus made it from China to the United States. Why? Because there's something that all humans have in common. We all breathe air, and it's an airborne virus. So while the shelter-in-place orders are helpful and they are helping stem the spread of the virus, it is my personal belief that at some point each individual is going to be exposed to this virus. So it's extremely important to make sure that we support our immune systems so that our bodies can fight off the virus if and when we are exposed to it. But again, my point is that this is a health care crisis, not an economic crisis. Eventually, this virus is going to pass. Now, we've seen evidence of that when we look at what's happened in China. They are almost back at full work capacity because this virus has passed. It's taken a few months, but it has run its course, and now their economy is back on track. Now, what's unique about the United States are the unprecedented steps the government is taking to make sure that the US economy does not go into a recession or a depression. Now, the economy being put on pause is different than going into a recession or a depression. Going into a recession or a depression means that there are some economic factors that are hindering free market trade in the country. That's not the case here. The only thing that's hindering trade today are the shelter-in-place orders and the work stoppage orders. But financially, the country is strong and the economic system is strong. Not only that, it's about to get a lot stronger. Now, remember I said I'm going to challenge what a lot of people are thinking today, because many people are thinking that we're perhaps getting ready to go into a recession or going into a depression. I'm going to challenge that. Many people are thinking this is the greatest opportunity to hold their money together and then in a few months, in a few years, go buy assets for pennies on the dollar. I'm going to challenge that. Many people are thinking that they're going to lose their jobs and never have an opportunity again to earn the wages that perhaps they were earning just a few months ago. I'm going to challenge that. Now, here's my challenge. I want you to think about this. I want you to compare the current healthcare crisis to the last financial crisis that we had in the United States. There are different characteristics. In the financial crisis, the problem is banks and lending institutions and the money makers in this economy made bets on people and assets that lost value. It lost value quickly, and it drug the whole economy down. So when the banks were making these loans, and these loans turned out to be bad loans, there was no way they're going to get a return on that investment. So as a result, they took the assets that secured those loans, wrote them down for pennies on the dollar, and put those assets in the free market, which drove the value of all the other like assets down. That created a financial crisis because we lost value. We lost value because the banks lost liquidity. They had to write down those assets. They had to get rid of them and sell them for pennies on the dollar, in which affected everyone. That's created that buying opportunity that people who had cash could go out and buy these assets for pennies on the dollar. In addition, the economic stimulus at the last crisis was only targeted for the super wealthy and for the large institutions, who typically do not spend money on consumer goods. So there was no stimulus for the real economy. It was based on the old trickle-down economics theory, which some people challenge. I'm probably in that camp, that it probably doesn't work very well, at least. Okay? And that prolonged that economic crisis. It was truly an economic crisis because the market lost liquidity and individuals did not have access to money to support free trade in the United States. Is that the case today? The answer is absolutely not. Think about what has just recently happened. First of all, the banks have more liquidity than they've ever had before. Going through the last economic crisis, they were better regulated so that the investments that they made did not expose them to the risk that they formerly were exposed to. As a result, the banking system, the money system is extremely strong. So banks have significant liquidity. They're not dumping assets in the market, driving down the price of other assets. That's one thing. The second thing is the United States government is just approved a bill that's going to put $6 trillion into the US economy in various ways. $6 trillion. Can you imagine $6 trillion coming into the US economy all of a sudden? What impact is that going to have? It's not going to be a depression. It's not going to be a recession. It's going to be the opposite. In 6 months, we're going to be dealing with an economic problem, but it's not going to be because there's not enough money in the system. It's going to be because there's too much money in the system. And when there's too much money in the system, what happens to prices? The prices shoot up. We call that inflation. Inflation happens when there's too much money in the system. The government has just approved to dump $6 trillion into the system. Now, so for investors who are waiting to invest, when do you think the best time to invest is? Do you invest when things are very, very expensive? Or do you invest when things are cheap or on sale? Right now, today, and probably for the next few months, is the greatest investment opportunity that you're going to get, because there is a huge challenge coming into this economy, and that is we're going to have too much money in the system, and it's going to drive all the prices up. Now, to evidence what I just said, I want you to think about something that happened. You know that when this shelter-in-place order started to come in, this work stoppage orders began to come in, the stock market lost 2,000 points. I mean, it dropped like a rock. And some people felt that the stock market was in free fall. When they announced the stimulus bill, the stock market had the greatest one-day gain that it's had since 1933. Now that's significant, but here's the question: why? Why did all of a sudden a stock market, which is an indicator of the economic system, that just a few days ago appeared to be in free fall, as if there was no hope? They were shutting down the stock market in increments. They called them circuit breakers, because they feared that companies were going to lose so much value that they were going to go out of business. This was just a few days ago, last week. This is what was happening. Now, all of a sudden, the same stock market, the same financial system are having record gains. Why? Because they recognize what's about to happen. With all of that money being dumped into the economy, prices are going to go out the roof. And that is why we saw the biggest one-day gain in the stock market since 1933. So yes, we are under a forced stoppage. And yes, it is affecting our economy, but it's only affecting our economy for a short time. In 3 to 6 months, this economy is going to take off like a rocket. Money's being given to families, money's being given to small businesses, money's being given to large institutions, money's being given to churches and charitable organizations, money's being given to everybody. And when this forced work stoppage is over, these folks are going to be spending money like crazy. And you're going to see the prices start to rise because there's so much money in the economy. So do you have an investment opportunity today? Today is the time you should be making that bet or making that investment, as many investors did on the stock market just this week. They saw that prices are never, ever going to be that low again. With all of this money in the system, we are certainly going to be dealing with an inflationary problem here in the very near future. Is there a real estate project that you're looking to invest in? You might want to consider making the investment today, because the return on that investment is almost guaranteed because of all the money that's in the system. Prices are going to rise. So that means your return on that investment is going to increase. You will not have these types of investment opportunities in the next year or two to come that's going to pay those returns, because prices are going to be too high. That's what we're going to be dealing with here in the near future. Now, that's my opinion, but I feel that that opinion is based on a strong economic fact, and there is certainly a lot of evidence to support what I've just said. So right now is a time to think about what not just the next 2 or 3 weeks are going to be, or maybe the next month or two is going to look like. Think about what things are going to look like in 6 months, in 12 months, in 18 months, and make sure that you are prepared financially and economically for that. We are going to see the greatest economic boom ever in the history of the United States here in a very short period of time. But the problem we're going to deal with is inflation. Prices are going to shoot up because there's so much money in the system. But if you make the right decisions and choices and make the right investments, you can be a person who thrives even during those times. I want to thank you for joining me today. Thank you for allowing me to spend just a little bit of time giving you my opinion about what's happening in the economy. I think if you research what I've just shared with you, you'll find that some of this information, I feel like all of it, is based on a sound economic fact. But again, I want to thank you for joining us, and I certainly look forward to having you join us in the future.